How's it going, you guys? So in this video I'm going to be discussing some of the differences between coffee, yerba mate, and tea compared to just isolated caffeine supplements, okay? So a lot of people, they assume caffeinated beverages are all the same just simply because they contain caffeine. There's also the same stigma attached to alcoholic beverages, okay? Despite the fact that there's, millions of people all around the world who feel that, there's distinct differences between each beverage, you know, besides the caffeine, regardless of the amount of caffeine or regardless of the amount of alcohol. Anyway, the same principle applies to wine compared to whiskey, compared to, craft beer, compared to tequila. It goes for pretty much all foods and all beverages in general, okay? It's not this isolated active ingredient that makes the biggest difference. There's actually hundreds and hundreds of synergistic compounds, okay, that can completely change the effect that whatever beverage or food or plant you're consuming has on physiology. Okay, so first of all, this right here is a really good review. It's a blog post, so it's not scientific, but I'm about to show you guys two really good studies to kind of back up what I'm talking about here, to explain. It's a review of some of the evidence on isolated caffeine supplements, caffeine anhydrous and, caffeine malate and whatnot, comparing it to coffee, okay, as far as telomere length, okay? And so essentially what it's saying is that coffee consumption is positively associated with longer leukocyte telomere length, okay? And, oh wait, is that the right one? This is the one I was talking about here, I believe. Yeah, caffeine consumption and telomere length in men and women. Yeah, this is the one I was talking about, but both of them basically say the same thing. Okay, so essentially this study, it evaluated the relationship between caffeine intake and coffee consumption. And yeah, it's essentially the same as this one. So essentially, caffeine consumption by itself actually seems to be correlated with shorter telomeres compared to coffee intake, which actually seems to be correlated with longer telomeres, okay? And, there's obviously many possible reasons as to why. We know that coffee has some unique chemicals, such as caffeic acid, and there's many other ones, polyphenols and antioxidants, and there's minerals and amino acids and whatnot. We know yerba mate, for instance, is a caffeinated beverage, as a caffeinated plant that actually contains a full array of amino acids, over 20 amino acids. It contains, dozens of vitamins and minerals. And it does contain different xanthines, okay, different alkaloids besides caffeine that drastically change its effects. Everyone's heard of theobromine. It's found in coffee and it's found in cacao and chocolate, okay? And so, here we have two studies discussing, basically the same thing, finding the same thing. Coffee consumption is positively associated with longer telomere length, okay? Higher coffee consumption was significantly associated with longer telomere length even after the potential co-founding adjustment compared with non-coffee drinkers. So higher coffee consumption is associated with longer telomere length among female nurses. All right. So, and for those of you who don't know, I should have mentioned this in the beginning of the video. So telomere length is all about aging. Okay, the longer your telomeres, supposedly the longer life you're going to have. So, in the American diet, we know coffee is one of the highest sources of antioxidants. And that's not saying much considering the fact that, the average American does not really consume much plant foods, doesn't consume vitamins and minerals in the form of whole plants. The majority of the vitamins and minerals they get are going to be in the form of fortified cereals and things of that nature. But anyway, there are many unique properties in coffee and in these other caffeinated beverages. Okay, and so, what does this remind you of? Well, this kind of reminds you of, green tea, for example. Green tea contains all sorts of longevity promoting antioxidants and compounds. It has theanine, which increases GABA and promotes relaxation and takes the edge off of the caffeine. We know that it also contains ECGC. I'm probably going to butcher the name, epiglycemic glucate, whatever. And that has profound neuroprotective effects, and it also protects endothelial function, etc., etc. And that's in green tea. Another interesting thing is some of the longest living populations in the world, which I touched on briefly in my Japan animal foods video. They consume a large amount of coffee. Okay, so let's look at the blue zones. Costa Rica. Costa Rica is one of the world's largest coffee production countries, coffee producing countries. Costa Rica, they drink coffee all the time. It's where coffee comes from. It's one of the greatest coffee producing regions in the world, really, Central America. Or is it South America? Pardon my ignorance if I got that wrong. I'm pretty sure it's Central America. I should know this, right? Anyway, the French and Mediterranean countries, not only do they consume a lot of wine, but they also consume a lot of coffee in varying parts of that area. Like, what do we know about France and Italy? Lattes and stuff of that nature. Sure, they eat a lot of cheese and put cream in their coffee and stuff of that nature, but they consume a lot of coffee. Okay, and whenever they have a Danish or a croissant or something like that, it's typically eaten alongside coffee or black tea. This is extremely important. There are actually a lot of antioxidant compounds in coffee and in tea that are very similar to some of the beneficial compounds in red wine that have been demonstrated in vitro to basically act very similarly to resveratrol. In fact, I could have sworn I had seen a review article that had mentioned coffee containing resveratrol, but I don't think so. I haven't actually analyzed the data on that or seen the source, but it's something I've heard. And we're consistently seeing more and more evidence that people who drink coffee tend to be much healthier than people who do not. And another thing to keep in mind is theobromine is a vasodilator. It opens up the circulatory system and essentially promotes nitric oxide. Now, caffeine, on the other hand, is a vasoconstrictor. But you gotta think of it in the context of a whole plant form, because caffeine stimulates glutamate, and it stimulates adrenaline and cortisol. But when you consume caffeine with theanine, it actually promotes alpha waves in the brain. It makes you more relaxed, but more focused and sharp at the same time. Theanine does the exact opposite of what caffeine does. So, all these people who think, oh, caffeine is caffeine, bro, blah, blah, blah. You're wrong. Like, yeah, caffeine is an isolated molecule, but when you consume it in some, 500-year aged pu'er tea, okay, believe me, that shit will put you to sleep. Like, last night, I went and had all-you-can-eat sashimi, just raw fish, right? And I had some really basic pu'er tea on the side. And after I drank that, I almost fell asleep. Like, literally within 30 minutes afterwards. And it's because pu'er tea makes me very sleepy. And pu'er is simply a fermented dark tea. Okay, it's made from. It has caffeine. It has about as much caffeine as like a black tea. And I consumed about 2 tablespoons worth. That should give me well over 100 milligrams of caffeine. But the thing is, it's not the caffeine. Okay, when I take a caffeine supplement, like, holy crap, I can't sleep, and I generally feel pretty jittery the most of the day. But even when I drink coffee, especially bulletproof coffee, or if I drink tea, obviously, I drink tea, man, believe me, I'm gonna look high, I'm gonna feel high. Okay, yerba mate does the same thing. I feel so calm, but it's not. But when I drink a pre-workout, or I take like a no dose or whatever, which I don't do that anymore. So you know, whenever I do, I just feel so like just hyped up. Okay, completely different. So anyway, we also know relaxation is associated with longevity, and so tea tends to be a very relaxing beverage. I know plenty of people who drink tea to go to sleep. And by the way, a little shout out to Brandon Gilbert. Okay, yeah, he just got his YouTube channel reinstated recently. One of my favorite authorities on tonic herbs, and he actually has a lot of tonic herbs he sells, some of the top highest quality. Recommend you all go and subscribe to his channel, Brandon Gilbert. He actually tends to drink tea to help him relax as well. You know, mostly pu'er as of late, and also oolong, which has a lot of it has caffeine in it, 40 milligrams per teaspoon, I believe. Anyway, yeah, I hope that this has kind of shed some light. Like, listen, isolated caffeine does not have the synergistic nutrients that the whole plant food has, okay? When you consume anything isolated, okay, and keep in mind, pharmaceutical drugs are just isolating the active ingredient out from the whole plant. Why do you think there's side effects from pharmaceutical drugs? Oh, it's just, you know, like, it's just something that happens and blah. No. Side effects are typically they're your body trying to balance out the effects of that isolated nutrient. When you consume an isolated nutrient outside of its plant form, for example, caffeine, it does not have the synergistic theanine that's found in the whole green tea plant. There are synergistic nutrients in these plants that balance out some of the other ingredients. So when you consume it in a whole form, it's much less likely to cause negative effects, but it still can, especially if you have an intolerance to that food, right? But there's a huge difference due to the cascade of synergistic nutrients. And listen, science hasn't even identified, you know, millions of these compounds. Like in green tea, we know of like about a couple tens, maybe 100 of the nutrients in green tea we might be aware of. You know, we know about the essential vitamins and minerals, amino acids, fatty acids. We know about some of the antioxidants and polyphenols, like catechins in the tea, tannins in the tea, you know. But do we know everything? Do we know all the nutrients? What if there are some extremely important nutrients that enhance the caffeine's effect that are in this whole plant? And science hasn't even figured it out. Listen, science has figured out some of them. There's so much evidence that it's better to consume the caffeine in the whole plant form. Okay, I mean, we know, like, the effects of theanine again. You know, the effects of theobromine, the effects of these other caffeine-like alkaloids, these xanthins. So, and also, like, coffee tends to be rather high in magnesium, and magnesium helps you relax. And different growing regions and different styles of roasting, different processing methods produce different nutrient profiles too. You know, some coffees are better than others. All right, that's why there's hundreds of different types of tea, of green tea. You know, and they all taste different and make you feel different. So yeah, I mean, these crazy people who say, oh, caffeine is just caffeine, there's no difference, you know, like, oh, you know why you feel anxious? Because you're drinking too much green tea. You know, it's got caffeine. Don't drink it before bed or you won't be able to sleep. You're full of crap, bro. I drink pu'er fucking tea all the time to get me to sleep. I used to drink black tea and yerba mate before I sleep. So, yeah. Anyway, let me know what you all think down below, and I'll talk to you all in the next video. Oh, and one more thing. If you guys are really interested about the science and the history of caffeine, this is a really good resource, okay? It's something like 300 pages worth of just historical references, the origins of different caffeinated plants, the different viewpoints and philosophies between different experts and people throughout the time on caffeine consumption, and the science behind the effects of caffeine consumption. It's a very good resource, unbiased. I highly recommend it for anyone who really wants to expand their knowledge on caffeine. It's called The World of Caffeine, The Science and Culture of the World's Most Popular Drug by Bennett Allen Weinberg and Bonnie K. Beeler.